Black pupils, white ties. They should not shoot. Countries A through Z should see their suits and ties, counters and exceptions as collusions. A Judge Napolitano, a good man. People are good people, A through Z. So when you start speaking about who is good or bad, you leave out how the breaching method maintains those differences. All differences used as systems tactical ulterior from the one that communicates with different black pupils. We have the same color eyes, we have different color eyes at the same time. Simultaneously, this is being and has been left out with where and how. The breaching method before America's founders were born, it had employed uses of these colors. For that reason, black and white forced sustained roles with what no one wanted naturally. And so then, when people came out of it, they would be blaming other things, others, themselves, even when correctly, they would be lying for the breaching method, or they would be sensed by the breaching method, even if as a majority of people, even if as a majority of countries, this breaching method employed clearer than day all groupings of humanity, knowing they would voice for humanity, and they would defend that as defenses increasingly as uses of the names of the sciences, therefore increasingly of the names of the people of the sciences, too, simultaneously. And the difference of that used criminally foreign influence / hyper criminally foreign influence. A breaching method that we could discern is a distinct method of and nature of criminal foreign influences that knew that modern countries and latter semi-ancient countries, they would have to use phrases like criminal insidiousness, criminally foreign influenced, to counter itself, which they knew they wouldn't be able to do it properly, which were calling it a hyper criminally foreign influence. See, all the people with roles with the crazy laws, witch trials, even witch trials were criminally foreign influenced. Roles with criminally foreign influence, readings of statutes and precedents, self-valued roles and remote uses of those roles, needs and natures denying it. Speaking about crimes while being and having been, roles with predicate acts with facts methods, black pupils. So Africa still has all these different countries and people trying to seek natures of unity based on color for the breaching method, demonstrably that having been set up by black themed and white themed international police forms in collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and the intelligence bodies that are only capable of being manifest since semi-ancient times. As systems tactical ulterior from that one which is hypernated pure. It's why and how it shows the reason of totally distinct countries to appreciate and value the difference of indigenous populations, even though that difference is consumed by the difference of people A through Z. Now, tactical terror from hyper indigenous systems. The Native Americans and indigenous populations, they're communicating that they want to be the identity of the ground, Earth, and its identity relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that as the hyper native. They want to afford means to connect with it, and they want to afford with means to discern and how used remotely the difference between the poorest Native Americans and indigenous populations, or where the species volume is, and the richest ones. The suburbs were designed before America's founders were even born, and a portion of America's founders were Native Americans individually grouped together. A portion of America's founders were also the portion at 13 locations that George Washington agreed to the plan of James Madison to counter extort at, to force the country to be. There was no real unity here or there. All exceptions exception nature too. The breaching method measured and maintained that, employed by itself, or and or sensing for itself. That couldn't be stopped because of how it was already entrenched, and because of how it measured and maintained what our founders communicated to us before we did. So, a Judge Napolitano, for example, from America, he is a much wiser and smarter man than me, especially about the law. But some ways, black pupils, we know that we could delineate the criminally foreign influence factor, nature, quality aspects, and natures, and the tactical delusions of of the greatest experts and the worst ones relative to these natures of hyper evidential truths that are self evident. For example, regarding how the suburbs were designed for the torture, extortion, and slavery, factory nature slavery. Therefore, physical natures of methods of slavery over over our founders, over our presidents, let alone over our founders, let alone over ourselves. And the difference between which ones had to counter extort the other ones, which ones were Native Americans. Because Native Americans are the only things that let that be possible. That was, in other words, besides the fact that those crazy factory nature breaching method, torture, extortion, slavery laws were against everyone. So James Madison's plan enabled that all they had to do was temporarily count extort at 13 locations, and then one for a little bit. And then those little laws were so crazy and had everyone sensing for itself through ourselves, everywhere the species volume is. And that causes a lot it causes a lot of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. And this breaching method knew that those that would also come with as nature's apart with nature's demonstrations also of itself, the breaching method. And it effectively preemptively employed such negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures with a whole bunch of natures of roles of the other natures and sides of slavery off the records, keeping those negative value nature progressions, acts, natures, and demonstrations, black pupils, blamed on other things, others ourselves, and or on selves. So even though millions and millions of Americans, let alone across the world, when we try to voice, we don't need other what's your evidence. How many ways there are to say what's your evidence, criminally foreign influenced, to keep things going before courts that still have collusions? Our founders left us to demonstrate they were victims slash hyper victims too. The courts, the police forms, the politicians, but they were also sometimes it was them the ones the most criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw slash hyper criminally foreign influence. That breaching method made suits and ties counters to them and exceptions. Also, all groupings of humanity extorted them, tortured them, enslaved them too. So now a leader comes in, they're going to learn Russians and Americans have been torturing each other, hurting each other, killing each other. And we have to speak about this, so we have to say things like Russians and Americans. It's not really Russians and Americans. We don't have possession of our names here or there. China doesn't have possession of its name. The relativity of yin and yang would have shown through. Ugh. Yin yang, alpha and omega, they were revealed to be taught together. And this is about where there is one identity that has all that is variable, except involved as exceptions, exception nature, and demonstration of where and how it is a forever nature. But it's simultaneously a demonstration of where and how it appreciates. And we are, as itself, supposed to appreciate a special difference. It's how we can discern. It's how we can figure everything out. It's how a computer could, therefore, for example. But what is complicated and what is not is lied about. What I write or what other people write or say that is clear and or that is unclear, they can't be honest about what is clear or what is unclear. The titles at countries A through Z, the jobs at countries A through Z. These are these are employments where we are hyper additionally identity per nature's trinity system. We are identity as we know names, but then we are further jobs and titles and voicings for the other species, for example, other things about Earth. Oh, there's something bad going in the water. Oh, this makes it good, you know, positive and negative has been separated from its hyper native demonstrations and means for the hyper simultaneous to be used. God more probably was is a variable in nature, the nature of debate and how that could be exploited. That also shows scientifically, it shows that, honesty, integrity would have revealed this earlier. The difference between calling everything God or having God a variable. So discerning the difference between what we know or what we just believe. On a mass scale, people pretend they believe things, leaving out exceptions and exception nature consciously, or lying about their motivations. Also, not realizing because they're also tactically delusions raw. You guys have had other communicators for James Madison and his agreement, George Washington, to use that plan and why and how they needed the plan they did. So one thing here's an idea to make a if Judge Napolitano will help. It seems like a lot, but everything is connected. These forced. There are people from my grammar school and from schools I went before that. I went from first to sixth grade, and I stayed back one time in first grade. They said because I was young. They're putting fake things in databases as people with their kids increasingly involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders. They have roles with a Michael Emmett, who's involved with a police chief Centron and 1 years ago with foreign and domestic medical families and a whole bunch of different police departments and lawyers of the Weathersfield Police Department and of the FBI and co-defendants of former director of the FBI Robert Luskin and people with the name Sully Bajario and Jeremy Grohl and people with the name Pierce involved with fire departments and foreign and domestic with attaching me involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and but also with judges and prosecutors attaching everyone to fake words and conversations with everyone around themselves, fake motivations for it. They're putting little kids to fake ties to other people, fake nice natures of ties to other people. It has something to do with their roles with uses of Central Connecticut State University in the Britain, Connecticut, and Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, and three spots at the end of the Borough Turnpike. Have roles with a whole bunch of people involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and planting evidences leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and sense. Increasingly, one of the things that ties them are a whole bunch of names at medical locations have been roles with putting fake transcripts and fake conversations with strangers and people that they pretend they know. since they were kids into databases, including at the schools. So Weathersfield schools have more people with the name Cololo and Mendez and Demoro who are involved with agencies, and former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, involved with abuses of kids. And there's people from private schools, a Mike Kerr, a Mike DeMay, um, and a Fred Grisette, involved with probate judges with sexual and medical abuses of kids with overt criminal enterprises, drugs and medicines crimes with little kids, people on off the state of Connecticut judicial branch officers. Increasingly, people on off Two Rod Highway, Hangdog Lane, and conjunctions to it are also involved with all along Route 3 and the Turnpike, which are the conjunctions adjacent to it, and other conjunctions adjacent to those locations and names involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders. Increasingly, people with the name Kevin Dillon, Anna Dillon, and she switches that to Annie Dillon. She's involved with courts that switch names and sequences so they could put fake evidences into databases because their roles were used remotely, criminally foreign influence investigators, and natures of perceiving bodies, names. In other words, the whole bunch of other countries and overt criminal enterprises are involved with our side's roles with this. And this is also how I know because I have time collusions with them. People involved with the witness protection program. People involved interstates with former Governor Malloy. Involved with state police with whiting forensics before I was born, when I was a little kid, when I was a young adult, and then as an adult. Increasingly, people tied to the family of I forgot his name. I never met him. Um, I don't know him. Is a senator, Joseph Lieberman, and there's a family member also of another politician, also associated with a Mike DeMay, who's one of the ones involved with names of kids that were abused, have adults and who had adults in their family and themselves be involved with the with abuses of others because of how they play the sense and sensibilities of everyone, where they do he said, she said. It's a part with wire crime methods where they have people now even have conversations over the phone, and the intelligence community puts fake transcripts. They have wire crime access methods. They put change phone trans. They change what's actually recorded too, including on Facebook. In some ways, it was all on the part of Facebook. In some ways, it was all on the part of the FBI and the different police departments and the state police, interstates. But whiting forensics in Connecticut with state police. Increasingly, our roles of wire crimes with people involved with falsified police reports and with remote uses of investigators, and names off election spots where all investigators in their campuses were and are being used remotely, criminally foreign influence. Increasingly, people with the like sheriffs, even reportedly and demonstrably tied to Joshua Schumack and his mother, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and medical offenders of kids, and sexual and other things, and identity thefts and frauds, faked, faked exceptions planting. These are people with stacking databases at the same time because other people are involved, and they're lying about their roles with foreign bodies. So the court's judges have roles too, and prosecutors. They have criminal and civil, all sides in criminal and civil cases, and the interbranch and or the intelligence tied to them at the same time. More and more, we're right where they don't want it. Exceptions are made for it, and they have collusion /s with stacking illusions in databases. So when you hear people using words like crimes on MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News, they have and have had for a long time collusions with prisons. Sandy Hook has a prison, and that's a campus, at a campus. They have fire department people and other intelligence involved with people with the name O'Brien, and with judges and prosecutors and people on off the state corrections offices and off the state judicial branch offices, increasingly involved with predicate acts and planting evidences with these names that used to live in my street. Harvard Hospital brought up the names Casper and, and also, which is and that's one of the ones involved with mayors with them too. There's a former mayor Gold. Increasingly, since I was a kid, people have been recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, and they sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. They have rules with behavior racketeering, identity theft, fraud, slanders, fake motivations, planting with various natures of federal criminals before they got caught, and people on off body dumping spots involved. Former director of the FBI Robert Luskin and retired and standing police chiefs intercities associated with this police chief Cintron and one years ago involved with 80 Carriage Hill Drive and other houses that Bob Chase brought up. And because he brought up a Phil Cololo, who since then also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. He's been planting evidences with a Bob Chase and people with whiting forensics and various natures of courts with child offenders, including sexual and medical, has something to do with their roles with the intelligence community all along Tura Highway, for example, and conjunctions and adjacents to it. There is a, and these are with a whole bunch of family members of Hartford courts, like probate court and a superior court of Hartford, had roles before the World Trade Center attack. Intercities planting evidences has something to do before the two marijuana places on the Berlin Turnpike were even there. Um, Various probate court judges associated with Dr. Shub of modern languages, people involved with all sides of the World Trade Center attack. They forced Saudis to collusions with them. They just attached people to fake words and changed words too. And with people from each of the campuses I went to have ties between themselves. In other words, they're making it look they're measuring and maintaining left out how they increase. These are increasingly people involved with Koreans. There are Koreans that also sought me out when I was a kid to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm per Joe DeMoro and other people with the FBI involved with Koreans and with Joe DeMoro with my fifth grade teacher involved planting evidences with people in classes I had before that and after that, increasingly involved with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and attaching little kids to fake ties and natures of ties to other kids, and planting fake motivations, lying about what they think when people use their names. In other words, they're forcing people to use other people's names or to stay silent so they can just keep stacking fake things. So Ray Cololo and is also one of the names on YouTube involved with the Phil Cololo and Whiting forensics with state police. Now, Eric Mark Violet also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed with Eric Jensen. There are state police along the Berlin Turnpike with federal evidences, crimes with them through time with their family members and neighbors of intercity. Newington police forms and military associated with Ray Cololo and his neighbor. I don't know his neighbor's name, but a whole bunch of people tied to a Ray Cololo and a Timothy O'Brien and Andrew O'Brien and their families. They've been planting evidences at Hartford locations and West Hartford locations with state police and with FBI and with foreign and domestic military and people on off the World Trade Center and their teachers. The intelligence community has been raising people criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, slash hyper criminally foreign influence. This is relative to where and to how, right through our schools, they're communicating other for for our founders than they communicated to have communicated for themselves. All exceptions in exception nature that appear to be in demonstration of other. They're in demonstration of the same things, and that's not being allowed demonstrated. In other words, it was not about a tea tax when we know that slavery was sickly distinctly entrenched north and south, and it was sickly non-distinctly entrenched. Appreciation of that shows also how functional being sickly non-distinctly against everyone, but left out with everyone's reason, because everyone was factory nature enslaved, not just tortured and extorted. That's what the torture and extortion was designed for. That's what the language of the law was designed for, what they call the law. There's a difference between law as a criminal insidiousness nature or positive, or law that is hyper-native pure. Boxing. I teach us things below. So it's like ridiculous having people speak about black and white. That's how they explain it. When the white people came, the leaders of Africa. That's how they're still talking about it. Black and white collusions with the law of voices forced all kinds of different. They even they had white people enslaved too, and they sustained it. So then it's a shock and awe. Keep everyone blaming other things other than themselves for what nature showing names A through Z, how it employed them to be used, the species volume. Nature shows us there's a whole bunch of different species bodies that are invisible but still discernible. And they come with how we have grouped difference slash S tied to that. And we are a whole bunch of individuals of this individual species body. Birds, fish. Fish have eyes that look even just almost like exactly like humans. They're the same quality aspects of nature. There are exceptions, distinctly, not distinctly, and simultaneously. But what is also further hyper simultaneous, that is inseparable from all things. All exceptions and exception nature that appear to be in demonstration of other show only the only reason that could be is because we're hyper additional nature. We're more volume. That's gonna be no matter what, whether it's positive to its system and onto itself or not is another thing. But you can't judge this by crimes. Judge through people and locations and natures that are collusions at each age and nature of campuses. So, where they have subject treatments and experts on types, they have mental health and they have physical health experts with Weathersfield campuses and campuses intercities, where they have people putting fake conversations and ties to kids with themselves. They're also attaching little kids and adults to faked and changed communications with everyone around themselves. This is one of the things the breaching method does too, where it's using putting fake motivations for it. The real motivations for it, where it's most important, is the breaching method's employments of them. That has never gone away, black pupils. See suits and ties, counters, exceptions, where they speak. The suburbs were designed before America's founders were even born. And they look exactly like the ones in Russia because they were designed before their founders were born, too, as a landscape theater designed to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, while screening that by simultaneously employing more and more the only means to cause positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures is if to be self valued roles with the maintenance of that, of uses of those negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. And roles with the factory of nature, torture, extortion, and slavery of every nature of wealth. Notice how we haven't afforded means to build, you know, out of this. That was the design for the torture, extortion, slavery of our founders. Now people would debate this, but where and how they debate it shows their self-value uses of ways that you can criminally say, well, what's your evidence? You have no research and get away with it because of For example, how this employed, no one to know and remember that agreement between James Madison as the face of our founders and George Washington, and how that agreement was also a plan, and how and why that plan was forced because that was only allowed. Torture, to be tortured, extorted, in fact, keeping nature a slave. Now go about your business. Now you're going to still speak about positive, negative, but you're going to leave that out. And so then they're making, in other words, they're screening themselves out increasingly. They propagated roles with that, only allowed until it was self valued. Now by where we are grounds voicings and employments by nature, now is through other natures of things, of systems. It was grouped together. All natures of unity and independence are collusions with as tactically ulterior definitions from how they have to be, how they are positive, not criminal, and this nature or positive as unity or independence. And this is about the Trinity's nature. There's three distinct, hyper invisible, but still discernible connections. So we see two because of two of the ways. In other words, the present participle and the past participle are two distinct, hyper invisible identities of value slash value progression. Hyper invisible but still discernible. Two of three that are connected. Of 1/3/5. And we'll examine this. Time has five distinct identities of sequence slash simultaneous nature, being simultaneously three ways bound and five ways, per where and how it is functional, being hyper invisible but still discernible, the identity of the hyper simultaneous. The ancients revealed that also one of the things it is the identity of forever nature. English is revealed to teach about how more and more forever nature is being made through temporary slash lasting space nature. And the top of the Z points back towards the A, where its identity and relationship to itself is being coupled by this. So its identity and relationship to itself is equal to volume, to being a volume, because it's increasingly it's increasing conjunction to this, and or to the bottom of the Z. In other words, this is about where and how everything is only increasing as volume, because it is only increasing as volume through all temporary slash lasting. Everything they're all temporary. It is making more and more of its identity of forever nature, the identity of the hyper simultaneous, through temporary slash lasting space nature. So planets and Earth and life was generated by its identity of relationship to itself and the value of that, only increasing equally. And then that generated matter. It is one hyper possession that we could discern by we only have an extent of it. But anywhere there is an extent, there is an extent of itself as a subject. It is five distinct identities of possession and demonstration of that. It's 1/3/5 to demonstrate that one. Hyper relativity is real. All parts of math are about relativity. How could people pretend with passions and emotions they're from math and then they say a relativity theory? How could people, in other words, because theory is one of the words used where they play games where they change and fake everyone's words. So we have psychopaths only allowed to speak with passions and emotions. They can't be honest when people use passions and emotions proper. They can't be honest when people use calmness proper. So they're still, in other words, I don't think they use the word Pan African. I remember in the '80s, it used to be on television, Pan Africa, and we used to Eddie Rodney, Eddie Dangerfield, Eddie Eddie Murphy used to be swearing, like in other words, which was I used to like not swearing. It used to be like a nice, calm, peaceful background that the television used to put. But then we saw it too. In other words, we have been discerning. If you're real with yourself, not like the formal voices, you would have the answers. Like in other words, about Native Americans individually grouped together and the colonists, we could discern there was a breaching method against them sickly distinctly from against the colonists and against ourselves. That's why we have to keep it real about how the suburbs were designed. We have to keep it real because the breaching method did more and does more to maintain self value, rolls with it having designed many quality aspects in nature and positions on all locations slash s, let alone the cities where it is overtly slash insidiously distinctly from the suburbs, where and how that breaching method before our countries were reformed played a role in maintaining hyper possession over all quality aspects and natures of it, a bunch of them. There's exploitation of that. So we should not have entertained economics, finances, the need to eat and drink, hunger and thirst, these hyper native this hyper native system, we should not entertain it, abridged. So Africa is a whole bunch of different countries. And humanity, in other words, nature itself forces us to be independence and simultaneously to be unity. Tactical ulterior from how our formal voices want us to be. You still have people speaking about we have to be a unity with black, leaving out the black roles with it. The legal natures there and here as collusions. You guys still teaching American history wrong, criminally foreign influence tactically. Hyper criminally foreign influence right through our schools. Now there's a whole bunch of oh but that's our job. Of course that's the only job. The difference between the best teachers and the worst ones, there's still collusions. That difference too is being employed. Certain type of victim slash hyper victim only heard, yet history told since some ancient times. Prepare our minds, Bakshi. So we can make a whole production company and make a virtual owner of it and show what that slavery method against everyone was about. We'll reverse the colors too. So we could take our time. It's not sick. It's in other words, this what nature would tell us to do. Shows us one of the options to do this. Because that breaching method did that to get over. It understood how nature communicated to the ancients, how nature communicates with difference where and how we have black people with the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time, and where and how there are exceptions, and where and how it uses exceptions and exception nature the ways we know, but also observably, hyper additionally, three ways further. As that which actually what came first, as that which is an identity of group and active relativity to ourselves. Again, that we can only accord with as is with or not. Even if we could agree and stay systems tactilitarity, we can be rewarded by it, but it doesn't mean it's not going to be. It's still a criminal systems natures of positive and negative as collusions, keeping blamed on other things, others themselves, that identity of possession of that and remote use of that too. People want to feel good about themselves, and when they feel bad about themselves too. This preaching method needs them to do it wrong, or they're going to just change their what they say. Many pray. It's not hard to discern the relativity of and it exists. Not hard to believe that faked and changed words go into transcripts go into courts every day too. Not just at campuses. Increasingly, it's the names next to the schools too. That the intelligence and foreign at the same time are using and with the news to repeat fake things and then call that an investigation because they've been using all investigators remotely because they've been using location slash S remotely, currently for example, tactically delusions raw. The suburbs were designed before our founders were born. In other words, there are means to discern the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures like murders in New York City, associated also with various natures of organized crime at the and methods as associated with the campuses that research such murders and such impositions upon locations, areas, and states, and that is used to measure and maintain people, natures, and instances and phenomena, keeping and having kept other things, others, ourselves blamed for what that breaching method caused, and keeps things like witch trials, even if it was made up by regardless of who. That breaching method caused that to be left in our record and used as is, and slavery and witch and Jim Crow laws. All those things are taught about wrong. They're all valuing crime methods, styles, blaming things on like why the kids didn't do their homework. You guys have the wrong natures of they're lying about when they talk good about boys or girls, or when they talk bad about them. They know how to speak. They know how to think. They're putting these kids on the Weathersfield Board of Education. There's a Michael Emmett with different cities involved with FBI, CIA, state police, foreign and domestic medical families, judges, prosecutors, their family members, involved with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, sexual and medical offenders of the kids, more leaders of the kids involved with it, involved with murders at the same time. Intercities, they brought this up. It's people involved with untimely deaths and other natures of federal crimes at Trinity College, even if the untimely death was made up. It's people who are planting evidence on my street in Weathersfield who have roles with that, and the same ones had roles on Covington Street in the Britain next to Central Connecticut State University. They've been training the intelligence community currently for influence tactically delusions raw since their inception. They've been roles with the sciences abridged. The English Department of Central Connecticut State University has roles with a whole bunch of people with Weathersfield Police Department through time, personally and professionally involved with federal crimes with them with evidences leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and sense. It's other departments too, the computer department, the acting department, people involved with the Watt Library, involved with the FBI and other countries with the World Trade Center attack, all sides with that and the counters to it. They didn't want to keep speaking when they're asked questions by news media that are with the interbranch and foreign, using that to measure and maintain, not discern, is what we are capable of discerning. And all the answers and means to heal. In other words, we're all owed so much. In other words, there are only like 350 or like 500 streets in Hartford, and individuals are stealing millions from there. Forget about it. From Hartford Hospital and the campuses and the names next to it. See, because there are foreign bodies involved with this too. They even more. That's how and why you guys have weapons and all this money, and people go ask the questions. You don't follow mandated law. So Judge Napolitano has roles with FBI and CIA and state police and Harper police families too, and Weathersfield police families. Also with people involved with all kinds of medical corruption and on off the state judicial branch office, on state corrections offices, with people on Fox Connecticut News and the buildings next to it, has something to do with their roles. Planting evidences with the news, with child offenders still, and people next to body dumping spots, and murders involved, increasingly. People involved with federal crimes with their patients and criminals before they got caught, and since to keep them hiding what's actually recorded. And these are fact achieving nature predicate acts with facts, methods, roles. These are people who've been speaking about crimes that never had the, they had roles of predicate acts with facts before they took their oaths. January 6th treatments also involved with this. People involved with, the follow mandated law. So I don't have to keep talking about people. Get them on name, one name in sequence. They've been attached to me, fake change communications with everyone around me too, since I was a kid. So get them on name in sequence. Let's go. Play